right, here we go. And we are live. The first live stream of dansk.ninja combined with learning with Irvin. And this is Ask Us Anything About Danish. And I was just thinking that it would be great if we could have a Google Drive document. This is a webcam live stream, right? So we don't have all the fancy software for sharing documents on the screen. So we're gonna do live stream so just create this document and make sure that anyone can open it, because this way we have a sort of a board that we can write on for everybody to see it. So let's see. Okay, so I'm just going to go back and then I'm going to post the link here in the chat so that this is going to be the Google document that we're going to write on. So this is where we'll write samples in Danish. So apart from saying it, we're also going to be writing them in here. So, okay. So the idea is that anybody who has a question can just chat their question in here, and we'll try to answer it as qualified as we can. We'll try to come up with an explanation for the things that you've been wondering about in Danish. If you're just beginning to learn Danish, if you're new to the language, maybe you have lots of questions, you don't know where to begin, but no question is too small or too big for us. And Erwin is saying, please make it editable. You mean, can you hear me, Erwin? So Erwin, you're saying make it editable so that anybody can edit it? All right, let me try and see if I can do that. So in share, right? Anybody with the link can edit. I think that's doing the trick now. Check it out. All right, you could, right, that's true. So you could also write the questions in the document, or you could write the questions in the chat. You decide. Well, I was thinking, right, so you're saying it was for questions. It could be for questions, but also just, for the board, and it could be a document that everybody could use as reference afterwards. But if the questions are on there too, it's fine. Totally fine. Okay, Erwin is saying first question. We have a first question. What is the top 3 mistakes that Danish learners make? Just corrected you, Erwin. So, yes. What are the top mistakes? Well, so I would say that, well, Danish has a lot of endings. So I would say that if it counts as one mistake, I would say that endings on words in Danish is a big one, right? But it's kind of cheating, right, to say endings, because endings can be many things, right? But I would say like things like, by the way, how does it look like? How does the page look here? Should I zoom it in, or does that make any difference? Probably not, right? You can do that on your own, the document, so that you can read it better. So for instance. So endings, right? Verbs, something like infinitive versus present tense, right? So things like jeg skal gå om 5 minutter. This means I have to leave in 5 minutes. Very often we see this go as gå instead in there, right? So that would be a very, very common mistake to have the R in there, right? Which is wrong because we always use infinitive after modal verbs, right? So that's a big one when it comes to verbs. Right, and Erwin is saying tror synes, right? So yeah, definitely also right up there, the difference between tror and synes. So let's have some examples with that, right? Jeg tror det bliver regnvejr i morgen. Jeg synes maden smager godt. So the issue here is that many languages have just one word for tror and synes. In English, it's think, right? I think it's going to be rain tomorrow. That's this one. I think it's going to be rain tomorrow. And this one, I think the food tastes good, right? So the issue is that many languages, English included, only have one verb where Danish has two. We have tror, which is about things that you lack knowledge of, right? So tror is all about things that you don't know. You might be able to find out, but you might also never find out. Like it also happens to be the one that the verb that is the base of believing, right? Jeg tror på Gud means I believe in God. Jeg tror Gud eksisterer means I believe God exists, right? So tror is about belief, but you may or may not, like you don't know, but you may or may not be able to find out. In the case of rain, you just have to wait to find out, right? In the case of God, that's more of a metaphysical question, right? Whereas synes is your subjective opinion. Jeg synes filmen er god. I think the movie is good. Synes hun er sød. I think she is nice or sweet, and so on. So these are subjective opinions, right? So this is a big one as well. Like Gavin said, it's probably up there with some of the top mistakes that people learning Danish tend to make. When it comes to we talked about endings before. So endings in nouns, this has to do with number, gender, and definiteness. So gender is grammatical gender, right? Number is just whether it's one or more, and definiteness is whether it's something that we know, something that is common knowledge between the people that are speaking or writing together, or not, right? So and in number, it might have to do with what kind of number ending, what kind of plural ending you put on a noun, like en bil, to biler, one car, two cars, et hus, to huse. Sorry. So already here we have examples of some of the issues in Danish. So en bil means a car and et hus means a house, right? So this is determined, whether it's en or it is determined by gender. There's two genders in Danish, but they're not based on biological differences. So they're not male and female. There's just these two genders that all nouns divide into. And then in the plural, you have endings like er and e. So both of these are plural endings, but depending on what noun we're dealing with, it's going to have a different plural ending. And there's no connection also between gender and the kind of plural ending that you get on it. So it's really, I mean, all of this is something that you have to just memorize, right? Which is the challenging part of it. And we have someone named Unicorn who is just about to write something, I think. Enhjørning in Danish. Unicorn is enhjørning. Enhjørning, sorry. So a unicorn is n-gender, right? In enhjørning. And I think we would say to enhjørning, like with an e ending there. Enhjørning. And I have to go back and forth between the chat and the document here, so I'm not seeing necessarily immediately what people are saying. So far, it's only Avin who's chatting. 6 types of change. What is 6 types of change, Avin? Oh, you mean 6 words for to change. Right. Yeah. So what can you share some of those, Avin? So we have a walrus and a unicorn and an alligator viewing the document. Which one are you, Avin? Are you the unicorn? Oh, I'm writing in someone else's here. Ooh. Inhjørningen. Are you the unicorn? So let's have a look at our poll. We made a poll at the beginning of the live stream, and there have been 3 votes, and they've each been cast on one of the 3 options. So right now we are looking at 33% for each option. So we asked the question, what language do you prefer the live stream to be in? English, so that everyone understands. This was a suggestion, right? That was kind of that's my logic behind mainly speaking English in the beginning, and like as a default. But if people have questions that they want to ask in Danish, and that's fine too. But 3 people voted, and they each voted for English, Danish, or both. So right now it's a tie. So I guess we're just gonna continue the way we've been going. So let's have a look at the document. Avin, would you like to post some of those examples of how to translate change in Danish? Okay, so Avin, you're still there? Yeah, let's see. So while Evan is thinking about that, I could mention another big thing that people worry about and think that people ask about, and it is how to be polite in Danish when the Danish language doesn't have a word for please, right? Cecilia is saying hi. Hi, Cecilia. Good to have you here. So Danish doesn't have a word for please, and people often bring that up. My students often bring that up and say, so what's up with that? And it's true. Many languages do have an equivalent of please. Like Spanish has por favor, German has bitte, right? So there are many languages that do have a word that is equivalent of please, but Danish doesn't. But I don't think that that's actually uh, like that doesn't make such a big difference between Danish and other languages, because um, even in English you can make equivalent polite or less polite sentences like you can in Danish. But I guess please is a handy way of adding politeness in a single word, right? But in Danish, what we could sort of, I usually like to make a scale of politeness, and I've done that also on my site called dansk.ninja. So we do have something about that on there. I'm gonna go into that and just give you my take on politeness in Danish in a minute. But I just want to share this link to a blog post about politeness in Danish. Um, just put that in the chat. So I sometimes use I like to use a practical example just to make you visualize these things, right? So let's just take an example like close the window, right? In Danish, like I am closing the window would be jeg lukker vinduet. I am closing the window, right? So the verb lukker here is with the R ending on the infinitive form, right? But we have an even shorter version of the verbs, which is the imperative form, and that's the one that you use for giving other people orders. Close it, eat it, leave, things like that, right? So the imperative of close is look. And the imperative verb form is actually the only verb form that can work as an entire sentence on its own. Usually we say that Danish verbs must, as a minimum, have a subject, either pronoun or noun, some kind of nominal content in the subject position, and it must have a verb, an indicative verb, right? So a non-infinitive verb, right? But the imperative is the only exception to that rule. So look just means close. Sorry, not please, close. I'm writing this, by the way, if you're wondering, I'm writing this in the Google Docs document. I'm just going to reshare the link to the document there. So the link is in the chat now. So I'm going to write some examples, the examples that I'm giving you here, I'm going to write those in the Google Doc, right? So look just means close, right? Lugte means close it. Close it. And I'm using the exclamation point because it is really kind of shouting here, right? It's shouting language, or at least commanding language, right? When you use these imperative forms, it's not very polite, but there might be contexts, especially with people that you're very familiar with, people you know very well. You might use the imperative with them just for shorthand because it takes less effort. But in cases where you want to be more polite than that, there are other ways, even though we don't have a word for please. So I'm just going to give you the example with look vinduet as well. So luk vinduet is close the window. Close the window, right? So now we can make this more polite by simply stating this as a question instead, okay? So lukker du vinduet means will you close the window? So it grammatically it's a question, but in terms of the intention of the question, it is the same. It is, could you please close the window? So lukker du vinduet as a question conveys a little bit more politeness than luk vinduet. And then you could have something like lukker du lige vinduet? So by adding lige, we're adding a bit more politeness. The word lige means something along the lines of real quick or without much effort. Okay, so a sentence with lige usually is something that you can do quickly. Something like, okay, so let's just say, jeg lukker lige døren. That means I'm just going to go ahead and close the door. This lige is indicates that it's going to happen. Either it's going to happen quickly and without much effort, or it's just going to be for a while. Okay, so I'll close the door, and then for a minute could be part of the meeting depending on the context. Okay, so lige is something that means real quick. But it also adds politeness. So that's good to keep in mind that adding lige to a question that is intended as a polite order or instruction, adding the word lige will make your instruction more polite. Okay. And you can add something more. Lukker du ikke lige vinduet? It's adding ikke, which actually means not. In this context is adding another layer of politeness. Okay. So in a normal sentence, jeg lukker ikke døren. That means I will not close the door. Okay. I will not close the door is the normal meaning of ikke, right? It adds a negation. It adds a not. I won't. I will not, right? But I can't seem to make this. I can't highlight this. What's going on? Oh, here we go. So by adding ikke to a question, you're adding politeness. Right. So Cecilia is saying, what about the word venligst, and when is the right time to use it? That's a good question. Venligst, right? So to be kind, the adjective kind is venlig. Okay. So I'm just going to put that down here I'm going to put that at the bottom of the. No, I'm going to put it together with the other example sentences that I put here in the document. So venlig means kind, and venligst is the superlative. It means kindest, but it translates as kindly. So it can be kindest, but it can also mean kindly. The thing about that word is that we don't really use it very much anymore, and especially not in speech. So venligst is considered a highly formal word, but you might hear it at the airport or on the metro. You know, venligst medbring alle dine ejendele, når du forlader toget. Means something like kindly bring along all your belongings when you leave the train, something like that, right? So venligst is used when you're making a sign for someone. Like please wait to be seated at a restaurant. You might have venligst, like Erwin, and also on the phone, like if you're calling and then there's a hold position, something like that, it would be venligst, right? So you have all these written or formal context where venligst still has a role to play. But I would say that in spoken language, venligst is used jokingly at best, at least for modern speakers. Like maybe you can find 90 or 100-year-old people somewhere who might use venligst in the sense that that is used that please is used in other languages. But I would say that venligst, if you use that with a straight face in a day-to-day conversation, it would feel weird to me. What do you think, Gavin? Do you agree? Do you concur? So thank you, Cecilia, for that question. And for you and everybody else, keep those questions coming while I continue to make this a bit more polite over here. So we began with look, which is close, and then close it and close the window. Luk vinduet, right? And then it becomes more polite here. Lukker du vinduet is phrased as a question, but intended as an instruction. Lukker du lige vinduet? Again, just with lige as adding more politeness, and ikke lige. And notice that it has to be in this order. You cannot say lige ikke. It wouldn't work that way. So these central adverbs, which is what they grammatically are, that are adding politeness, need to be in this order. Ikke lige. And when we pronounce it in a normal pace, we say, lukker du ikke lige vinduet? So it's, lukker du ikke lige vinduet? So ikke lige is what we say. Lukker du ikke lige vinduet, Erwin? Right. So this is sort of the question form, but we can also use modal verbs like can and will, like would you please, could you please, right? So du lukke vinduet, and now we use the infinitive of lukke. Notice that it's dropping the R because it comes after a modal verb like will, okay? So will you close the window is a polite way of saying please close the window, okay? So will in English, the English will indicates future, but in Danish it's more often indicates willingness or desire, okay? So it's important to keep that difference in mind. And if you're wondering about modal verbs and the difference between uses of modal verbs, you might have guessed what I'm about to do. Yes, I am going to share a link to a description of modal verbs in Danish and the difference between how they are used in Danish and English. So I guess one of the big problems is that will and will sound very similar. And beginning, especially for beginners learning Danish, it's like, well, it's kind of the same word, right? So it probably means the same thing. But in most cases, if you're trying to use will, if you're trying to use the Danish will where you would use will in English, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to be misunderstood because there's difference. And the same thing with the Danish can and English can, They look the same, almost written the same way, but the use only overlaps between Danish and English, but is in no way identical. So we go back to these polite ways of asking to please close the window. Vil du lukke vinduet is one way of saying please close the window. And you could also just as well use can, okay? So for all of these examples that I'm giving, you can use can just as well as you could use will, okay? So can you, will you close the window is what this means. And it is a polite way of asking to please close the window. So the next level, maybe you can guess what the next the means of taking this question, this polite instruction to the next level. What do you think we can add? Something that we've already used? Any guesses? Something that could be added to the question type polite instruction that can also be added to the modal verb polite instruction. Typical teacher guessing game, this kind of thing, right? What do you think it is? So Julia is saying lige. Yes, exactly. So yes, you can say, kan du lige lukke vinduet? And of course, I haven't even talked about intonation yet, right? Intonation is obviously huge in all of this. Or you can almost even say that just using the bare imperative could be construed as polite as long as you use the right intonation. Maybe not, but obviously things can be made to sound less and more nice depending on your intonation. So let's just take some of these examples. Like, let's just take the simple one, lukker du vinduet? If you say, lukker du vinduet? That sounds polite. But depending on your relationship with the person, it might be sarcastically so, right? Passive aggressively so. But if I said, lukker du vinduet? That even sounds like I don't want you to close the window, right? But, just keep in mind that intonation plays a role. So Maha Yosef is saying, hi, jeg prøvede. So you tried something. What did you try to do? Did you try to add some text to the document? Let me see if there is anything up here. We have 3 people viewing the Google document. So, and actually I think now we have a mink now very related to the Danish mink scandal. So there's an anonymous mink viewing the document right now. That's great. So to the point here. But let me just share the Google Doc address again here, the link here again, so that you can find it if you haven't found it already. So English and Danish are actually tied in our poll about, and 8 people have voted here, right? So English and Danish are tied. And I'm guessing this is just my guess, I'm guessing this might express a difference in people's level, right? Because if you're just beginning to learn Danish, then if everything was in Danish, then you wouldn't understand most of what was being said, right? And I totally get the people who also want things to be in Danish. Jeg forstår godt, hvis man gerne vil have forklaringerne på dansk, fordi på den måde får man samtidig, man lærer noget dansk, og man får samtidig en grammatikforklaring. Så det forstår jeg godt. Totally get that sentiment. So not an overwhelming victory for anybody at the moment, for any of the 2 sort of language options that we put up there in the poll, in the chat here. So Maha Yosef, if you want to try and chat that question again, because it didn't quite go through. Okay, so we had kan du lige lukke vinduet as a more polite option, and you could also say kan du ikke lige lukke vinduet? Couldn't you please close the window real quick? Is what this would translate as, right? Couldn't you close the window real quick? Kan du ikke lige lukke vinduet? Kan du ikke lige lukke vinduet? But really all it is a more polite way of saying please close the window. And we can add some more stuff to this to make it longer. And I'm not even like some people say, oh, come on, now you're making stuff. Now you're just making up sentences just to, impress us with the Danish, the language, the sentences that you can make in Danish. But people actually do say these things. So, kan du ikke lige være sød at lukke vinduet? So this means, would you please, would you not be so kind to close the window real quick? Okay. So kan du ikke lige være sød at lukke vinduet? Kan du ikke lige være sød at lukke vinduet? Kan du ikke lige være sød at lukke vinduet? Okay. And if you're thinking, oh, come on, people don't actually say that. They do. So given the context where this would be relevant to say, they do say this. Kan du ikke lige være sød at lukke vinduet? It's like an overly kind way of saying it and overly polite, but there might be context where you would want to say this. So it depends. But like I said in the beginning, I don't think that all of this is a way of compensating for the lack of the word please, because English has many of these things as well, right? You can say, could you close the window? Could you just close the window? Like you have some of the same things that you might say in English, right? But just not as, I guess, not as elaborate and grammaticalized as in Danish, right? We have all these modal particles like lige, the word lige, that means real quick or effortlessly. Like you don't have many of those. There are not many of those in the English language, and we have an abundance of those. So in case you're wondering what I'm talking about, let me just see if I can copy paste some of these modal particles in here, because I have a list of modal particles that we can have a look at here. And one of the things about these is that it's stuff that we don't usually in the traditional sort of classroom, we don't talk a lot about these modal particles. And part of the reason for that is that the written standard of Danish is sort of, overly represented in Danish language teaching, I would say. And these are very much tied to the oral Danish. Okay. So I think a big reason for not having these is that for not talking much about these in class is that we usually don't write them very often. So Olena is saying, han har endda bogen. Ja, selv ham. Hun havde ovenikøbet lavet dessert. Gajol smager endnu bedre end lækkerol. In English, all these words are translated as even. Is there any difference? Right, I'm just going to copy paste this text that Olena wrote and put it into the document here, so we can always come back to the modal particles. But let's have a look at what Olena said. So let me just separate these sentences so that they are on separate lines here. Right. Gajol smager endnu bedre end lækkerol. So, right. There are 4 examples, right? Han har endda bogen. That means something like he even has the book. He even has the book. Yeah, selv ham. Yes, even him. Let's just put these out so we can have them in a single column here. Hun havde oven i købet. She had even made dessert. Okay, and then gajol smager. Gajol tastes even better than lækker, right? So in the first one, he even has the book. It sounds to me, it means like you have been mentioning a bunch of things that he is, for instance, doing in order to learn Danish. And he even has the book. So in that sense, even is adding another feature on top of all the ones that we have already listed. Okay, so endda is adding an extra feature on top of everything else. As opposed to, yeah, selv ham, yes, even him. In this case, it means contrary to what you might expect, even he has the book, right? So you're expecting something else of this guy. Maybe he usually doesn't study much, or maybe he wouldn't even sort of usually be the kind of book person to give a book to. So it's kind of like you're expecting something of him, and then you're saying even he. So it's like if he has the book, then certainly everybody has it, right? Yeah, selv ham. So it's a different sense of even, right? And then in the one about making dessert, she had even made dessert. This ovenikøbet is more related to the one we had first, endda. So let me just put those in a different order. No, let's not do that for the sake of the video recording here. But so ovenikøbet is related to endda. It kind of means the same thing. It adds an extra positive point on top of everything else that was already there. That's the way I understand it. And then gajol smager endnu bedre end lækker. Gajol smager endnu bedre. So it's like you've been praising the taste of gajol. It's great. And then lækker is like next level delicious. Gajol smager endnu bedre. So it's a comparative endnu. And in this case, endnu is not an adverb to the entire sentence, but it is an adverb to bedre. Okay, so in grammar, you have things that modify each other, right? And in the other sentences that we have had, these have been adverbs that apply to the entire sentence, but endnu only applies to the word bedre. Okay, and it's only modifying bedre. So bedre means better, and endnu means even better. Okay, so it's grammatically more limited, and all it does is that it just makes better, well, even better. Does that make sense? Does this answer the question? So endnu is the only word that is used with an adverb or adjective. Yes. So endda cannot be used to as an adverb to amplify an adjective like this. Like bedre is an adjective, and endnu is an adverb that is applying to is modifying the adjective, right? But none of the others can be used in that way. So yes, that's a correct observation, Olena. Good job. Right. So I was just about to say something about modal particles. And you're very welcome, Olena, by the way. So one of the problems with modal particles, as I mentioned before, is that we mostly use them in speech and not in writing. Well, it's not a problem. It's just a fact. So let me something went wrong here. Okay, so some of these have sort of gone wrong in their parsing with the words here. So And the other problem with them is that they're very rarely stressed. In fact, they are never stressed. Well, never is a strong word in grammar, right? But I would say almost never stressed, right? So, and the problem with that is that you can't really hear them. So, right, Erwin is presenting a question. So let me just say a few more words about modal particles, and we'll come back to what Erwin is asking, or someone is asking through Erwin here. So yo, let's just take yo as an example. So I'm just gonna write up here, vi er venner, we are friends, right? And then if you want to say something like, of course, because we are friends, or something like that, it's vi er jo venner, and it sounds like vi jo venner, vi jo venner. So in phonetic writing, it would say something like this: vi jo venner, vi jo venner. Okay, vi jo venner. So it's difficult to hear those. It just sounds like an O on the end of the pronoun vi, vi venner. And just like, as you should know, it is Saturday. Det er jo lørdag becomes det er jo lørdag. Det er jo, I don't know how, something like that, something like that, right? I don't have a phonetic keyboard here, but the point is that they're not stressed, and they're very much a feature of spoken language, and they add something about what the speaker is thinking of while speaking. Okay, so let's get back to the question that Erwin was asking. So someone named Marin, and I'm guessing this is someone on the Zoom, right? How important is pronunciation, little accent, in the PD3 exam? And the answer to this is that it is not important at all. What is important is, what is important is correct pronunciation. Like you need to pronounce and articulate distinctly enough for someone to be able to effortlessly understand you. But the fact that they can hear that you're not a native speaker, or even that, like the fact that they can hear an accent or even a strong accent, should not prevent you from getting the maximum grade, as long as they can understand you. And was that the question that you had, Marin? So Cecilia also asked a question. Can I ask a question? What are you teaching? I guess my question might be under adjektiver. So I'm not sure I understand that question, Cecilia. Can you sort of rephrase that question? I'm just going to go through the document to see if anybody wrote anything anywhere. It doesn't look like anybody's written a question. It's fine to keep the questions in the chat so that we're aware. Do you only teach adjectives? Do I only teach adjectives? Well, we've talked a lot about adverbs lately, not so much adjectives. But by you mean me personally, or do you mean that teachers mostly teach adjectives? Or okay, well, I teach all. I hope I teach all aspects of the Danish language, but I do like to emphasize on especially words that have endings on them, because like we said in the beginning of the live stream, endings are a big issue in Danish, and knowing what ending to use in what context can be very difficult. What to say to Danes that always switch to English? Yes, that's a good question. Actually, I think that there are t-shirts and badges made for that, right? Let me just see if I can Google that. So, speak English. Sorry, speak Danish, or maybe it says tal dansk. Something like speak Danish to me or something like that. Okay, for some reason my Google is giving me things in other, like in Polish. Okay, interesting. So tal dansk til mig. So speak Danish to me. I thought that at some point I saw people who had made t-shirts or badges that they were wearing that said please speak to me in Danish, or tal dansk til mig, or something like that. I thought that was really cool. Jeg lærer dansk ved at tale dansk. Thank you, Klaus. So that's what it said on the badge. Yeah, I don't think I saw any of those actually, any of my students wearing them, but I remember that they existed. So yes, Cecilia, of course, ask your question about adjectives. So I think you should say, maybe you shouldn't actually, what I experience people doing sometimes with me, like in various contexts, if you want to show people that you want them to speak in Danish to you, I think what you should do is speak Danish. Like that is the clearest way of showing it, right? Like, I know it can be awkward, but almost like pretend that you don't understand English, even in context where they know. It can be like you can do it with a smile, and it can be kind of like a joke, like showing them that you would like to keep this conversation in Danish, right? I think that's the easiest way of doing it. And I see this in class sometimes as well, right? Because we try to switch from English as the meta language, right? We gradually switch. Module 1, we begin because we have no common language, and English is a quick way of communicating, right? And then we try, module 2, module 3, we try and speak more and more Danish. Then hopefully we end up switching, making the full switch, right? But sometimes I get that vibe in class that my students are, kind of putting me in my place and trying to, don't speak English to me by maintaining the dialogue in Danish. Right? But of course, it requires a lot of guts, and it requires a safe space to do it in, right? And time as well. So, can you explain more about grundform, T-form, and E-form? Yes, I can. So the reason why I'm pausing is that I'm wondering if I have some text that I could just put up there. I mean, I'm just going to go to the Google document here and see. So we can sort of start from the simple way and only focus on singular nouns. Okay, so adjectives are the things that are used to describe nouns, right? So in bil, in gul bil, right, a yellow car. You don't see many of those. Et hus, a house. Et gult hus. Okay, so I wish this was all you needed to know about adjectives in Danish, right? Because if it was, then it would be pretty straightforward, right? On yellow, you don't add anything if it's N gender, and you add a T if it's T gender, right? So that seems pretty straightforward, right? The problem with this is that in the plural, gender is no longer an issue. So you say to gule biler, to gule huse. Okay, So you can say, okay, that's nice, right? Because once we go into the plural, we don't even have to worry about gender anymore. That's nice, right? But the problem, the biggest problem with this is actually that the E form is not just used for one thing. It is used for um, two categories, you could say. So the E form is used for indefinite plural forms, but it is also used for definite all forms. Okay, so the E form replaces everything else in certain contexts. And Anonymous Dragon is putting some text in here. Yes. So what I'm talking about here is the highlighted yellow stuff here. Okay. So there's definite articles in front of bike and dance and house and life and so on. So den hurtige cykel means the fast bike, right? Den hurtige cykel. It's singular. It is N gender, and if we go to the beautiful house, det flotte hus, it is T gender, and still you have the E form. Okay, and if you had plural forms of these same sentences, you would still have the E form. Okay, in other words, the definiteness of these sentences is overruling everything else, you could say, right? So, and by definiteness, I mean mit, because possessive is also it's also considered definite. So min gule bil, mit gule hus, Peters gule bil. Sorry. I'm just going to use the same adjective because this is going to make for more clarity, right? Peters gule bil, Peters gule hus, and I'm using gul because it's a regular adjective. There are some examples that lack some of these forms, right? So den gule bil, gule hus, and now we're going to do the same thing in the plural, and you're going to see that these forms don't change, right? So mine gule biler, mine gule huse, Peters gule biler, Peters gule huse, de gule huse, and de, sorry, I said huse, it should have been biler, right? De gule biler, de gule huse. So notice how the adjective stays the same in all of these, right? So that's what I mean when I say that the E form overrules gender and number because it is definiteness, right? Definiteness just kills all of the other distinctions, you could say. And of course, as you know by now, I really, really hate, you know, sorry, what was that? So I really, really hate, obviously, promoting the stuff that I've made myself. But I think that this video that I made explaining all these things explains it really well. So in case you forgot, or in case you couldn't find your way back to the recording of this that I just said, you can always use this link to the YouTube video where I'm explaining not just adjectives, but the way nouns conjugate, and also the way adjectives work. And Julia says, do you teach private classes? You can send me a private message and find out. And my YouTube channel is dansk.ninja. So, Erwin, do you have any last questions on your end? because time is running out, as they say. And of course, we could hang out all night. Will this happen again? I feel very good about this, so I'm feeling yes. But what about you, Evan? Live streaming? Yeah, I mean, things tend to start small, right? And I think in this live stream we had maybe a peak at 15 participants, right? And I'm thinking we can do more next time, right? The word gets around and so on. Maybe people watch the recording of this on YouTube and think, "Yay, we're gonna make the next one." So yes, we should make this a regular thing. How regular? I don't know yet, but let's definitely program some more of these in the near future. Maybe with a different format. Like I know that there's this software that you can use so that we don't have to do the Word document thing. We can have a share screen thing right here. But we just went online with this webcam because it's easy to do. So this time we're doing it this way. So no final questions. I'm gonna leave this document up so that you can always just go back. Like if you have the link, you can always go back to the Word doc, right? So let's throw it in here. There you go. There's once again. Right, Evan is saying next time on Zoom. And we can record there as well, right? So makes sense. Yep. But we have to figure out something about, like, in Zoom, we have to think about like who can unmute themselves and things like that, right? Because everybody, I mean, I teach through Zoom a lot as well, and if everybody is unmuting themselves and speaking at the same time, that's going to be a chaos, right? So we're going to have to figure out what the options are in Zoom. Maybe you know something about that, Evan, as well. All right. So this was all for now. Thank you so much for coming and asking your questions. It's been great. Thank you, Erwin. Thank you to Learning with Irvin. Erwin will be the strict moderator. It's been great. Have a great rest of your evening and join us next time if you liked it. Bye.